right on the other side. Honestly, that day I was in a good mood and just felt like being a helpful person that day.
In a good mood, 23-year-old Travis Minson wanted to be helpful to two men who flagged him down at a stoplight.
And they were from out of town, and they didn't have their ID nor their debit card. And they couldn't go to Navy Federal and get a debit card without their ID.
They seemed genuine.
I've also been in a situation where I didn't have my card and had to transfer money to someone and they send it back to me. So I said, sure, yeah, I'll help.
He says he handed over his cell phone so they could sign into their Navy Federal app, but instead they got into his account and quickly took out a $7,000 personal loan in his name.
It's a horrible scam, and it could cost you thousands of dollars. Federal prosecutors call it the parking lot scam, and it involves Navy Federal Credit Union customers being approached in the parking lot and somebody taking their phone and using it to make a transfer of funds. It has cost people locally more than $2 million, prosecutors say. I'm John Sham, and welcome to True Crime 757, where we dig deeper into the stories we put on air. And I'm joined today by our investigator, Margaret Kavanagh, who's been working on this case for a couple of years now. Margaret, how did this get on your radar?
Like so many of the other stories that we've done, I was at the courthouse in Virginia Beach and found a search warrant. And it said that this was going on, and then it said that there were 70 victims. And I was just kind of flabbergasted by that number, like 70, wow. We put a story together just kind of talking about the information that we discovered. And then I heard from a victim, and actually his father wrote me an email and was like, my son was a victim of this crime. And that was the first person I interviewed, Travis Minson. And he explained how he was over by the Lynn Haven Mall. You know, he's a young guy, he's a young adult. And these people were yelling to him at a traffic light and that they needed some help, and he pulled over to help them. And so they were saying that they don't have a debit card, they just moved to the area and they needed help with Navy Federal if they could transfer money in his account to them, and then he could, it was like a transfer back and forth in the phone. Bottom line, he gets scammed. He calls Navy Federal to report this. They say, I'm sorry, but you're on the hook for the $7,000. To him, he's like, I'm trying to buy a house. He's 20, in his early 20s. It was financially devastating for this young person who had been saving up all their money, not just the money that from the loan, but then on top of it, he had to pay interest. And that is what we found with so many of the victims. It's not just the loan, the personal loan that was taken out in their name, but it's also the interest that they are making. Now, the thing about his case that really struck a chord with me was he gave me the promissory note and some other documents that showed when these people filled out this information online very, very quickly. It was a personal loan on the Navy Federal app. They put his wrong job. It was similar to what his job was, and he was wearing his uniform. He asked me not to say what his job is publicly, but they put a different job that's very similar to his job, but not his job. So they were able to take out a personal loan by writing down entering the wrong job, and the money was still given to them in a matter of minutes. Now, one positive from that story is one of our viewers saw it, felt bad for him, and reached out and gave him a few $100s to help him, which I thought was
very kind,
so
yeah.
kind.
That's very nice, yeah.
He was the man that sent the money. Was like, I don't have a lot of money, but it just really, hurt me that this young man went through this. So that was one nice thing about it.
So how is the money being transferred? I mean, it seems like there's an element of social engineering where they are trying to manipulate the person into believing whatever story they're going to tell. But how are they actually getting the money?
So the first thing is they get their hands on the victim's phone and we've heard different things, but it usually stems from some kind of favor or they're in some kind of trouble. Once they open the Navy Federal app on the person's phone and are able to get into that app, like for Travis, they said to him, we have the money, can we transfer it from, can I use your Navy Federal app to transfer the money to you? And then he could withdraw the money to try to help them because they needed money. And in all of the cases, all of the victims are like, I cannot believe I gave my phone. They are very angry at themselves for doing this. But in the moment, it just kind of happened so quickly. Now, we also learned that there's different types of ways that they're doing this. So in some of the ways they're opening, once they're in the app, that's bad. That's when, but they are taking money and taking out personal loans in the victim's name and then transferring that money to various other kinds of apps, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, and in even some cases we've seen that they've transferred it to other Navy Federal accounts. So because you can apply for a personal loan so quickly, it was just a matter of seconds or minutes while they're able to do this. But yes, very much engineering the situation to manipulate the victim.
Right, and if I recall, there was one situation where somebody like pretended to be, like to not have their phone, and they were with a baby, and they used the baby to manipulate the person into giving access to their phone. I mean, that's a pretty complex con.
Yeah, and the 19-year-old victim, Angel Taylor, she was the second victim we interviewed. She's a student at Newport News. She was in the parking lot of a Walmart when this happened.
There was a baby in his backseat, and he was crying too, and I was like, okay, yes, you can borrow my phone. I didn't even know you could, apply for a loan via app, and so it was just insane that it had all happened in such a small amount of time.
In that case, the guy came up and he has the baby screaming and saying, I can't find my wife, I can't find her. Can I use your phone to call my wife? And when he got his hands on the phone, he was somehow able to get into her account. And this was back in 2023. So he was able to get into her account and then transfer money out. She says she called within a matter of minutes, like a few minutes after she got her phone back, just to be like, something didn't feel right, and the money was already gone.
Wow.
And they said, we can't stop it. We have to wait for it to hit. But then she was still on the hook for it.
So Travis was the first person that you spoke to, but how many people have you heard from since then?
We have gone on the record with 5 different victims who were willing to tell their story. One of them, he was the victim of this very serious crime. He didn't want his face shown or his identity. I've talked to many victims. A lot of people don't want to go on the record. They don't want to talk publicly, but it's the same kind of story, and a lot of embarrassment too, that they're having to deal with this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, from reading social media comments on your stories, people always say, like, how are they giving up their phone? It's hard to imagine being in that situation and not wanting to help somebody out who seemed like they really needed your help. A lot of people are willing to help out a stranger, even if it's circumstances that don't seem completely right. It's just unfortunate in these cases, as it ends up costing them a lot of money.
Exactly, and that's this thing that we have learned, that they are targeting certain people. They are targeting people in the military. I've talked to several people in the military. None of them have wanted to go on the record, but what they are targeting young people, and they're targeting people who they think that they can manipulate, which is something that bothered me even more about this entire situation. When I started talking to the victims and seeing, they're deliberately going after people that they think they can manipulate, it tugged at my heartstrings, because, I've been young. I understand what it feels like. You want to help somebody. And Travis was like the young man. He was like, I was in such a good mood that day, and I just was like trying to, I just wasn't thinking. And when they seemed so legit and they seemed so real, so that was.
So you mentioned the military aspect. So a lot of Navy Federal customers are people in the military. Why do you think it's Navy Federal? Why don't we hear about this with other, big banks, unions, credit unions in the area, things like that? Why Navy Federal, and why so repeatedly Navy Federal credit union customers?
Well, I think all banks and I think they're all under an extreme amount of fraudsters coming after them, trying to get money. The technology is changing so rapidly and so quickly that I think it's made it difficult for the banks and police to investigate, because I also feel like a lot of it, this is people approaching people in parking lots, but a lot of the banking scams are coming from other countries and things like that. So I think it's overwhelming. But for this, I don't know exactly why, but I believe there were issues with how easy it was to take out a personal loan. When Travis showed me that they put information that was not similar to his job, but not his job. I mean, you shouldn't be getting a personal loan for information that's incorrect on the application. And I opened it, and to see the application, you could do it really, really quickly. Now, we've asked Navy Federal what changes have been made to the personal loan apps. Have there been changes? They won't provide that type. They're not providing that kind of information, but they do provide a lot of other information that we'll get to about, what they say and the information they're providing.
Right, and I could see not wanting to divulge what they're updating from their security measures in an effort to maybe keep people more secure, right? Navy Federal, obviously they don't want their customers to get scammed, but this is happening and it's continued to happen. One of the developments in this case is that there have been some arrests made somewhat recently, and we will touch more on that after we get back from this break.
Your world changed in seconds, not by choice. It is personal.
Now, there has been a pretty major development in this case recently where prosecutors have indicted 10 people. What have these indictments revealed in your investigation, Margaret?
The indictments provided so much information, John, because it was an issue that we knew was going on, right? But we didn't have any, I did ask all the different police departments, and, Chesapeake had like 120 cases, Virginia Beach had like 90 or something. So we knew it was going on, but the indictment really outlined, it was 20-something pages long, and it outlined so many details about how the operation was working, the different ways in which they were getting the money from the victims, how, the indictment said there were 33 different cases and that there were 500 victims reports taken and throughout the Hampton Roads area. And this indictment is just federal prosecutors and their case. There's other cases in the city courthouses, like Virginia Beach. There was one of the victims that we interviewed. He got scammed, right, outside the gym. It was the same thing. These people were trying to befriend him. He realized the money was taken out of his account. He thought that they were going to be friends and hang out and stuff. He contacted them again and said, hey, I think this happened, thinking it was a mistake. They said, oh, we'll come talk to you about it. They came to him, and then they picked him up in the car, and then they forced him to drive around and yelling at him and being very threatening and forcing him to take more money out, buy gift cards.
Yeah, wow.
And we reached out to Navy Federal with this guy's name, and then the police arrested 3 people for this.
Wow.
So they made an arrest in this case, and he told me that Navy Federal told him he was still on the hook. And I'm like, well, what if they're convicted of the crime? Are you still going to make him pay this money back? So it was just bizarre, the way in which these people have been victimized so clearly and still being told they have to pay back money that was fraud.
Yeah, so the interest rates on the loans, they're not low either. So what does Navy Federal say about this when you've reached out to them?
So I've reached out to them we've done so many stories on it. I've reached out every time we've done a story, and their statements that they issue are pretty much, don't hand your phone over. I've asked the one victim we interviewed, Matt Tignor, he had this happen to him, and he was paying 18% interest on the loan. When I've emailed them and put the specific cases, they always say back, we can't speak about ongoing investigations, we can't provide customer information to you. They work closely with law enforcement when our members report fraudulent or criminal activity in the account.
So do we know, is Navy Federal working with the investigators, the prosecutors who are looking into this case? Have they been cooperative to your knowledge?
I don't know if they've been cooperative. Federal cases are very difficult. We have with the information that we have. The parking lot scam is the name that was given to this was from federal prosecutors. We have never called it that. That is what federal prosecutors call it. So I don't know the extent to which is going on behind closed doors. I just know that there's a lot of victims that are out a lot of money because of all this.
Yeah, you said $2 million, right? And that's obviously a lot of different victims, but $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, that means a lot to a lot of people. And especially if you're young and you don't have that much money, I could see that being really impactful to your life and your ability to pay your bills.
Yeah. Like Travis was like, I've been saving up every cent so that I could buy a house. I just felt terrible. For a lot of them have the same kind of stories, and then they started paying the money back. They didn't want this looming over their head, and they're listening to the financial institution, saying you have to pay it back. So they just started paying it back.
Because it would affect their credit score too if they didn't pay it back. And
Exactly.
So there's another consequence for them that, even these people who might go into this situation having good credit, they don't want to pay back this loan from somebody who stole from them, but they have to in order to keep their credit score, which again would influence their ability to buy a house, buy a car, so many things that require you to have a good credit score.
Yeah, and that's, we ran story and story, and it exhausting. Like, how can this be going on?
Well, and now it looks like they have some new representation, somebody who's trying to help them. A local attorney I believe saw your investigation on air and decided that he wanted to reach out to the victims and basically, advocate on their behalf to see if he could get to get some of their money back and get them out of this difficult situation. So we'll talk a little bit more about that after we get back from this break.
Your world changed in seconds, not by choice. Fight is personal.
We have been flooded with calls, mostly from coastal Virginia, but several from Florida, Kentucky, Northern Virginia, California, and the pattern is always the same.
Margaret, who's Gary Byler?
Gary Byler is a local attorney. I've known him for years. He contacted me immediately after he saw one of our reports a few months ago, and he was like, I can't believe this is going on. And I felt relieved that he has the ability to help people get their money back, get their credit back, or whatever. So he said, this is wrong, this is not right, that they shouldn't be doing this. They shouldn't be forced to pay back loans that they didn't take out. And he wanted to help. And he felt like, he told me he's not looking for money from these victims. We did a story about his interest in helping. And he said his phone started ringing off the hook, and he's got about 40 or 50 at this point that he's representing of people that have gone through this. Now, it's not cut and dry where every single case is the same. They're all a little bit different. But bottom line is that they're all being forced to pay back money that they say they didn't take out. So he is working and has filed some, legal documents in an effort to try to get these people their money back, get them their money back. He wants to get them their interest back, and he wants to clear their credit so that they're not, facing any kind of issues if they didn't pay.
So how does he verify that these cases are all legit? You could see maybe somebody trying to get in on this, maybe that they took out a loan that they meant to take out and they just kind of want to, get in while the getting's good. Like, how does he verify?
Well, he has a crew of people that are doing work with this, looking into it. The first thing I ask people when they come to me and say they've been victimized is, let me see all the documentation that you've taken, that you've done. Let me see your police. Did you contact the police? Did you file a report with the FBI? Whatever. What do you have that you have done on your own? Several of the victims have sent me like all of their banking information. One of them, you could see she's like, the money went from here to here, and it's in another Navy federal account. I tried to find who that person was. The documentation, I'm sure that's what Gary's doing as well, with a lot of this. And if there isn't fraud, if there wasn't fraud, we'd expect to hear something back from whoever would have that information, police, Navy Federal, whatever, about what, if there is some kind of issue with it.
Because you'd think there are cameras in the parking lots, and that maybe that, once they file a police report, they could go, the police could go to Navy Federal and say, hey, could we get your parking lot, camera from this time period when the person said they were scammed in this to taking out a loan. So we hope that those investigations, yield, something productive for these victims, and that we hope that Gary Byler is able to also help. What's next for this case? What is Gary doing, and what should we expect to see from him over the next few months?
Yeah, hopefully we'll see whether his efforts are working or not. He has filed legal paperwork for several of the victims in an effort to get a response from Navy Federal about it. We are waiting to see what happens. We know that there's been issues in other states, like down in Florida. So he's waiting to see, but these things do take time. Anything in the courts can really jam up stuff. It can make things more difficult. It can take a long time. So I know the victims, a lot of them have already felt like they've waited a really long time. So a lot of them are just so happy that they have him to kind of lean on and for help. Because it was a long time of like reporting on this and being being, it seemed like not nobody cared, but it was like people's hands were tied on what they could do or what they couldn't do.
Is there a way that if you believe that you had been victimized by this, is there a way that people can get in touch? Should they reach out to Gary Byler? Can they reach out to you? I mean, what are the avenues for people if you haven't, if you feel like you might have been victimized by this and you haven't reached out to somebody yet, where can you go?
Oh, definitely. Gary is still taking people. In fact, he told me he just got another case. He continues to get more and more cases, people reaching out. People in other states have reached out to him. Our area is very highly used by Navy Federal because of the military influence around here. But he's still taking people. I'm still looking for more victims. I know if you do feel, you should definitely call Navy Federal, report it. You should contact the police and report it, and just try to prevent it from you should try to prevent from you having the loss of any money. But that he's still taking people and he's still gathering information. I think it was it was more than what he originally thought when he signed up for it.
Yeah, I mean, 50 cases, that's huge. So just to kind of recap, what other than don't give people your phone, what advice should we be, leaving people with about this? If you are a Navy Federal customer or if you ever get approached by a stranger who may be trying to manipulate you. And
that was the interesting thing in our comments too. When we ran these stories, so many people were writing, someone approached me and asked me to use my phone. I saw that several times on all the different stories. That I know the most obvious, but do not let anybody use your phone, get in your phone. And, be aware that they're targeting people. And I think what you were saying earlier with the cameras and stuff, that's why they've been able to make arrests in many of these cases, both local arrests and then, the federal prosecutors going after that group of 10. It's like an organized thing that they are doing. In the indictment that we read, it explained that one person is used as a mark. That's what they called the person they're going to go after. Then they have a talker who's going to be, that's the suspect that's going to approach the person to have a conversation, to try to befriend you, to try to gain your trust and make you feel sorry for them or whatever the situation. And then they have another person who's like working as a phone controller. So they're watching and doing kind of more the technical aspect. But just being aware that when you're in parking lots and strangers approach you, you should be very concerned, not very concerned, but just wary of that type of behavior and people wanting
Sure.
something from you.
Situational awareness is always important, regardless of whether you're in your bank parking lot or your grocery store, especially, it's gets dark earlier this time of year if you're out at night. Just be aware of your surroundings and again, just don't give people your phone. Your phone has so much important information about you and everything about your life nowadays, and you don't want to make yourself vulnerable to these types of schemes and scams. So,
and then all the locks. If you can put locks and the numbers and
two-factor authentication.
Yes, and all that.
Making
sure that it's as protected as it can be.
Right. Yeah. So that even if somebody does get access, that there would need to be multiple steps before they could actually get access to some real information that could harm you and your family. So, well, thank you for your work on this investigation and for coming to the podcast today. So that's a wrap for this episode.